Hi everyone, and welcome to the Go2mobi Tips and Tricks webinar. I'd like to thank everyone for attending and also mention that we've got a really big turnout today, and that's a really exciting thing for us. We know we've had a lot of new advertisers sign up in the last little while, and the system's growing, expanding, the team's growing. We're really excited that everyone is giving us feedback, and we're able to sort of keep releasing new features and keep you guys interested in buying ad space and provide you guys with a good platform to be able to target your mobile ads and your ad spends to traffic that works for your campaigns. So my name is Jeremy. I'm part of the Go2mobi team, and I'd like to formally welcome you all to this webinar and mention that these will become a more regular thing as time goes on. This one today it's a little bit special because lately we've been just sort of focused on basic campaign setup and sort of Kickstarter type webinars for some of our newer advertisers, but I'm excited today to see that we've got a fair amount of existing sort of experienced media buyers and experienced users of our platform. So I'm excited to sort of include some content in today's webinar that's going to help with optimizing your campaigns and maybe some more advanced settings and features that some of our experienced media buyers might find really interesting and hopefully will be interested in taking advantage of after. So kind of the format and the way this is going to go is I'm just going to start, probably start with a little bit of a walk through the campaign sort of setup page. The main reason why is just it'll give me an opportunity to highlight some of the key features and explain a little more about maybe some optimal settings for you to use to all the way through from when you start up your campaign and you're looking to gather data and make a smart test, all the way to the end where you're optimized towards profitability and you're looking to scale. So I plan to spend a fair amount of time talking about that. Then I'm going to go over to the reporting side of things, show you a little bit with a test campaign, and maybe explain how I would optimize this campaign a little bit, and then there will be a sort of question and answer period at the end. So historically, we have gotten a lot of questions on our webinars, so I assure you I'll try and get to as many as I can. The only thing we won't really have time to cover today is specific campaign questions. So if you do have a question, feel free to enter it in the question box, and I'll get around to as many as I can when we're all done. But if I happen to not get around to yours, or you think of something afterwards, feel free to email us. We have a really responsive support team, and we try our hardest to get back to you as quick as possible and provide the most helpful insights and information we can. So with that in mind, as I mentioned, I'm really excited. I'd like to happy to welcome everyone to today's webinar, and I'd like to get started. So basically, as I mentioned, I'm just going to start with the campaign and go through a few sort of setup tips to help you get optimize the kind of data that you're going to see in your campaign, and then also as we progress through the webinar, I'm going to go over to the reporting side and explain a little bit more about how to maybe how to make best use of the reporting panel, and also how to optimize your campaigns towards as they progress through the different phases of campaign development. So here we are. This is this is just a test campaign that I set up. It's basically what I'd like to do. I'm just going to start from the top and explain really quickly what each of the features is. I know some of you are pretty familiar with them already, so I don't want to spend too much time. But as we go, I'm going to sort of highlight some key areas that maybe give you some ideas for what some settings might be, and then highlight how you might use it as your campaign progresses. So as you can see, test campaign, this is pretty standard. You've got your destination URL. Now, for those of you that haven't yet implemented conversion tracking or don't really understand what it is, I do just want to spend a few seconds on this. And basically what conversion tracking will allow you to do, and you'll see the value when we go over to the reporting panel, is it'll allow you to fire your conversions back into our platform and then see what pockets of traffic are generating your revenue and your profit, and then optimize towards them. So it's not impossible to do if you're using an external platform to track, but when you start to see how granular the platform is, and then have to start doing all these complex calculations to try and figure out your earnings per 1,000 impressions and metrics that you need to optimize against, it can be a bit of a dog. So yeah, conversion tracking, it sort of plain and simply, that's what it does. For those of you that haven't yet implemented it, in every campaign and also within the accounts tab, you're going to see this link right here. All you need to do is click on that link, and it's going to open a box that gives you a bit of instruction on how to implement the postback link. And it's going to give you this link right here in this gray box. And this is your unique postback link. So this is unique to your account, and it's almost fully configured to work already. The only thing you need to think about is you need to make sure that your dynamic variables match the parameters that you're passing through the device ID scan. So basically, sort of, let's say that this is a sample link. Let's say that your URL is tracking.advertiser.com, blah, 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 and you're passing through your unique click IDs under sub ID 1. You need to make sure that your postback link is configured to look within your system and find those values in the sub ID 1 field. So in this case, you may need to substitute the word click ID right here with sub ID 1. So I didn't want to spend too much time on postback tracking. We do have some additional documentation in our help section, and we're working on the finishing touches of a sort of an explainer video that's going to detail some of the major tracking platforms and how to implement this. But I did sort of want to mention that this is the first step when you're thinking about implementing it, is you go in here, you pull your postback link, you need to go to your advertiser panel and figure out, what kind of dynamic parameter can I use to pass these values in, and then you need to take your offer or campaign destination URL and make sure you include the squiggly bracket click ID parameter, and then make sure that you reference that corresponding parameter in your postback link, and then all should work as intended. So that's one part. Another little thing that I wanted to mention was we do also have a huge plethora of URL variables that are going to allow you to pass through any information about each click that you receive from Go2mobi. So as you can see, the top one, click ID, that's important for tracking. But you can also pass through things like your placement name, creative ID, the creative dimensions, geographic stuff, user agent stuff, carrier stuff, etc. So that's a pretty important tool, because a lot of advertisers, they want to know where their traffic's coming from, and they may be pretty established with the tracking platform. So you can always use these variables and pass them through your URL and report on them within your own panel. And again, if this is sort of foreign to you and you don't know where to start, we have a support team that's great at sort of diagnosing problems and helping you implement them. So feel free to reach out at any time. So yeah, that's really all I wanted to talk about with the tracking stuff. This section here is where I want to spend a fair amount of our time here, because these are really important settings, and they're also settings that we notice that a lot of people don't actually take full advantage of. So basically, to explain a little bit more about what each of them does, frequency cap is it's a tool that allows you to limit the amount of times that your ad is shown to a given user within a 24-hour period. So right now, this campaign is set to the default. All these settings aren't enabled. So your ad could be shown to the same user multiple times. It could be 2, 3, 5, maybe even 10 times. And so it's easy to understand why showing your ad to the same person over and over and over again, whether they're interested or not, might not make the most sense. So we give you the full functionality to be able to limit the amount of times a user sees your ad per 24-hour period, and in doing so, allow you to spread your daily budget over more different unique users, so that you're getting a wider spread and hopefully a better representation of all available traffic. So as far as settings go, the way I sort of view this, and the way that our sort of campaign managers that work with our big managed clients use these tools, is they want to start fairly conservative, so maybe a 1 or 2 setting, no more than 3, and then as they start to hone in on the pockets of traffic that are profitable, then they optimize and they open it up, and they want to scale as much as possible. And so starting with a conservative setting on frequency cap never hurts, because like I mentioned, it's going to spread out your spend over as many different unique users as possible. So that's a really important feature, and like I said, I would experiment with it because different offers can perform differently. But setting it between minimum of one's usually a good place to start. No more than 3, depending on your test budget and the scope of your targeting. That's going to ensure you get the widest reach possible. The next feature that I wanted to spend some time on is session depth, and many people aren't familiar with exactly what that does. So I'll just explain. Basically, it builds off frequency cap in that you're able to target not just a specific user X amount of times a day, you're also able to target which impression you serve an ad to that user in. So let's use an example. Let's say, everyone knows Angry Birds, and you know that they serve ads. So the first ad that someone sees when they open up the Angry Birds app to play a level is session depth number 1. The second is session depth number 2. Third is 3, and so on. So what this feature allows you to do is it allows you to actually target a specific impression of a user's session that may or may not be worth more or less to you because of how many ads the person's seen before. So historically, what we've found, from a general sense, is that limiting your session depth does slightly increase the CPM, or it potentially can increase the CPM a little bit, but it also helps you get users before they're desensitized to ads or before they've seen too many ad displays. So generally, the lower session depths give you potentially higher CTRs, maybe higher conversion rates, but most importantly, it's a setting to really experiment with and play around with, because it's we give you the ability to target a user at a specific impression of their browsing session, and it's really important sometimes for some campaigns that you're not getting users that have already seen 20, 30 ads and they're not likely to interact with anything. So the key to keeping your ad sort of fresh in users' minds and helping them, maybe making them more likely to interact, is using the session depth and frequency cap features. As far as a setting goes, our system allows you to set ranges and individual impressions. So for example, if I just wanted to target impression 1, I would set it as such. If I wanted to target, a user within the first 10 added displays that they see in their session, I would set minimum of 1, maximum of 10, and this would do just that. Now, in conjunction with my frequency cap, I've specified I only want each unique user to see my ad once per 24 hours, and within those, I only want my ad rather to be one of the first 10 impressions they see when they start their browsing session on their app or mobile website. So that's a really important feature. I think 1 to 10 is a good starting point as a range. Now, if you're running, let's say an open United States campaign, all carriers, all creative sizes, all publishers, you could tighten that up a little bit, and you might want to go 1 to 5, 1 to 3. But for fairly targeted campaigns, 1 to 10 can be a great setting for that, so that you're limiting your exposure a little bit to people when they're most likely to interact. So keep that in mind. Definitely recommend that you test these settings on any new campaign. However, they are going to limit your traffic, sometimes substantially. So as you scale, or you want to scale a campaign, you're getting good data, you might be break-even profitable, looking for more volume, you can open them up and you can experiment with increasing the frequency cap and session depth and see how that does. The last feature that I wanted to talk about in this section was the daily budget per placement. And this is a really, really useful tool because, I know there's, as I mentioned, a lot of experienced media buyers on the call that have spent a lot of money media buying, and undoubtedly one frustration that we all share is just that you set up a test campaign, you spend, $500, $1,000 on it. The first day, you get, 60, 80, 90% of your traffic from one publisher, one placement. And even if it's potentially a good performing placement, it's just not an efficient way to see all the available inventory. So this feature is really helpful in that it allows you to limit how much any one placement spends per 24 hours. So the way that I look at this feature is relative to my CPA goal. So let's say that my CPA goal is $2. I'm being paid $2 per each install of a new game that I'm promoting. So I want to set my daily budget for placement to no more than probably 2 times my CPA, anywhere from depending on the size of the CPA, half your CPA value to about 2 times your CPA. So in this case, that would be anywhere from about $1 to $4, maybe even $5. And that's going to allow me to spread my budget as wide as possible over as many different publishers. It's going to work hand in hand with my frequency cap and my session depth, and it's going to really work to ensure I get the best test data possible, because I'm not I'm getting an even spread. I'm seeing a whole bunch of different users. I'm seeing them at their most most interactive or the time when they're most likely to interact with my ads, and I'm spreading out my budget over as many publishers as possible. So as I mentioned, anywhere from half your CPA value to maybe 2 times your CPA to start. That'll give you a good look. You'll be able to, depending on how fast you want the data, you'll be able to see after a couple days, where are my high volume pockets that aren't going to work great, where are my high volume pockets that are going to work great, and where are the pockets that I'd just like to see more traffic from. And that's going to allow you to, you're going to get a great picture or a great impression of all the available traffic. So that's a really exciting feature, undoubtedly one of the most important ones to test, and definitely something that it's important that we talk about today. So keep that in mind, play around with it, test it. Obviously you're going to want to open it up as you start to scale your campaigns, because it is going to limit your volume substantially, but something to err on the conservative side maybe a little bit for in the beginning, and then as you start to get a handle on where your volume's coming from, start to open it up, and then that's how you get to scale and increase your profitability, hopefully. So yeah, there we go. There's daily budget for placement, frequency cap, and session depth. I really suggest that you test these features on every new campaign. The last thing that I wanted to talk about here was just the different bid types. And we've got a standard bid type with all the traffic sold on a CPM, so it's just like any other traditional CPM ad network, where you set a bid in this box right here, and it bids that across the board. So regardless what device, what placement, what publisher, country, creative size, etc., you're going to be bidding, in this case, 25 cents. So what we found is that this really isn't the most efficient way to bid in an RTB environment or in an auction-style environment. The reason being is that there's a lot of pockets that may require bids substantially higher than what you might initially set this to, but they may convert really well, and they may also and not end up costing you very much money. And so just to elaborate a little bit on that, all RTB inventory, or all of our inventory, is sold on a second price basis. So we've got, there's a difference between what you bid and what you pay. So essentially what happens is you may bid $1 CPM, but if the second place bidder for that impression only bids 25 cents, your cost and what you pay is going to be 26 cents CPM. So that's the main reason why using a flat bid CPM isn't always the best way to buy this kind of inventory. So with that in mind, we built what we call our auto bidder, and what this does is it takes a little bit of the guesswork out of bidding, because you're not constrained to one set bid, that might have you winning almost all of the, cheaper traffic and not even seeing expensive traffic. So the auto bidder is going to, it tracks sort of over our whole platform what it needs to bid for every combination and segment of traffic. So everything from device, carrier, creative size, country, publisher placement, etc., and it determines what it needs to bid to win about roughly 40% of that traffic. And the reason why it's about 40% is because it's kind of, from our data analysis, it's sort of historically the sweet spot, so that you're not winning too much of a pocket, and you're also winning enough to get a representative slice. So you're going to know where all your traffic's, where your campaign may perform best, You're going to see all the available inventory. You're not going to be locked out of some and wondering why, where's the volume, what's going on. So this is going to ensure you see all the available inventory, and it optimizes your bid price. So essentially, kind of to take a step back and explain how this works, this feature is designed to basically be a test feature that you find the pockets of traffic that don't work, you blacklist them, you find the pockets of traffic that do work, you bid them up, you optimize the bids towards receiving, a higher win rate or winning a bigger percentage of the traffic, and then the rest of the traffic kind of sits on auto bidder, and as it sort of chugs along and finds more pockets, you optimize accordingly and get it off auto bidder, or get certain pockets off auto bidder. So that's kind of how it works. It's a great feature. We always recommend that you use it, especially for testing, because it is going to expose all the potential pockets to buy traffic on. It's also going to ensure it optimizes your win rates for you so that you're not winning too much of some traffic and not enough of others. So that's the auto bidder. And again, another setting that we always recommend that you test. Some advertisers do run parallel tests. They might start with a standard bid and then clone the campaign and run the same campaign with the auto bidder. What we've found and the feedback that we've heard from our advertisers is that the auto bidder definitely outperforms most standard bid structures. So definitely something to keep in mind, but feel free to test it out and determine for yourself and your own campaigns what works best. So that's the auto bidder. Real quick, just FYI, the daily budget is split evenly throughout 24 hours, in the spirit of getting the best test data possible and ensuring that you're not, spending your whole budget in the first hour of the day. It actually takes whatever the daily budget is and splits it up into 1-hour segments and only spends that much per hour. So it's going to ensure you get data from all the hours of the day that your campaign's eligible to bid. So just something to keep in mind. If you want a lot of volume really quick, you may want to set a rather high daily budget. And, for example, if you want $100 worth of data in the next hour, set the daily budget to $2,400, and it's very, very efficient and effective at staying to that 1 hour sort of cap. So you don't have to worry about it going wild and spending too much. So something to keep in mind. The rest of this is pretty standard. As I mentioned, I don't want to spend too much time on the actual features because you see them when you create your campaign. They're all over the help section. We have explainer videos and explainer content to talk about how to use them. So day parting. This is one thing I do want to talk about with day parting though is just the fact that we do see some advertisers that they don't use day parting to its full advantage, and part of that is just they never really bother to run the stats in reporting to see, hey, you know what? There's certain hours of the day that my campaign is pulling my campaign down, or others that it's like, holy cow, the margin is great, and then it's still profitable overall, but it's it would be very profitable if I didn't run on these hours or if I only ran on these hours. So that's something to keep in mind. It's not just a feature for performance marketers that their advertiser only accepts traffic certain times a day, or brand advertisers that want to maybe run a morning campaign or evening campaign. It really is. It's another parameter to optimize on, and something that goes all too often sort of forgotten or doesn't even get thought about, but sometimes it can make a huge difference. So keep in mind that, and feel free to run reports and start to analyze the trends for your campaign performance. Geo stuff is all pretty standard. You can target countries, you can whitelist, blacklist, you can target as many or as few as you want. Carriers, same thing. This is definitely a parameter that people are more likely to dig into and identify potential pockets of traffic that work and optimize. But sometimes sometimes we see it. We work with advertisers that they don't start a campaign off, maybe giving it its best foot forward by specifying certain carriers or Wi-Fi. Like for example, let's say you have you're running a CPI game type campaign. Well, it's possible. It's a lot of these CPI games that we've seen. Sometimes they're large file sizes, and that for those of you that don't know, most smartphones and most cellular carriers actually prompt your users. Some of them don't even allow them to download files over X amount of megabytes because they're going to use up too much of their data, and it's in their own best interest. So in that case, it might make sense to only target Wi-Fi because, you're wasting your money on carriers. Again, that might be an obscure example, but it's just something to keep in mind is that, there can be significant performance differences between carrier and Wi-Fi traffic and even within the cellular operators. So if you've got any historic data, it never hurts to start with, potentially a whitelist campaign for certain carriers and then also run it side by side with an open campaign, or, just something to keep in mind because, like I said, there's quite often fairly obvious trends, performance advantages or disadvantages to targeting one or the other or specific ISPs within either one. So something to keep in mind. Another thing, we offer full placement category targeting. This is one feature that actually I do want to talk about real quick because it's something that we had a lot of advertiser demand for this feature, but it's actually one that it can greatly limit your campaign and may not even put you in front of the audience that you really want. I don't want to say never use it as a horrible feature, but I do want to say something to keep in mind is that these categories right now are defined by the publishers. So sometimes what happens is a publisher might want to increase exposure for their app or website, and they may categorize them with multiple categories, that may or may not be relevant. So, for example, you might get in arts and entertainment, you might get a game app where you might also get that game app in society or games or hobbies and interests or, whatever, however they choose to categorize it. So that's something to keep in mind is that they do, let's say they do about a 90% job of giving you, what you're expecting if you were to target books and literature, news, etc. But there is a little bit of overlap where you might run your report after, targeting these, and you might wonder a little bit like, okay, so this is kind of funny that I'm getting traffic from, a game and I'm targeting news. So just a heads up that that's kind of, that can happen. It doesn't happen that often, but that can happen. And another thing to keep in mind is that quite often there are verticals, that an offer, like let's say, let's go back to the game type offer. A game may perform well. It just so happens there might be an app that's, within the weather category, for example, that might perform really well for a game offer, but you might not think, okay, you know what, I want to target game consumers or people that like playing games. You might not even realize that that app's there when you only target the game category. So something to keep in mind. Usually what we suggest is that you don't use category targeting unless you have, a very limited market that you want to target, because it is going to limit the scale of your campaign. It's also going to limit the overall exposure by maybe not showing you some publishers that might perform well. So something to keep in mind. It is a useful feature, but there are a few little limitations. And I do know that right now we're going to be in the near future we're going to be changing those categories to be ones that we define, and in doing so, the accuracy is going to be greatly increased. So something to keep in mind. Same thing with placements here. This is a perfectly transparent list of placements. As you can see, the first ones don't make a lot of sense, but that's just because they're sort of alphabetically. If I were to want to, target, type a keyword in, I would see all the related apps and be able to target based on keywords. So that's something to keep in mind. You can whitelist or blacklist specific apps. You can also do the categories above. Again, same theory. If you know some apps that you don't want to target or sites, yeah, go for it, blacklist them here. But otherwise, you are going to, you might not even realize how much you're handicapping your campaign by just sort of cherry picking, or what you think is cherry picking, some placements or publishers off the list. So strongly recommend that you just run it open in the beginning, get a feel for how the offer performs on the different apps and sites, and then optimize from the actual data instead of starting it out, with some preconceived notions, unless you have a good reason to suspect that those might actually impact performance. the next thing, devices, pretty standard. You can whitelist, Android OS. You can also whitelist specific devices or makes. So, you can go Android, you can go Android Samsung, you can go Android Samsung Galaxy, blah, blah, blah. So full functionality there. Creatives, really, standard creative sizes. We are undergoing some testing right now for rich media and for video creatives, and so those are going to be available on the self-serve side. They're actually already available on the managed side, but very shortly those will be available on the self-serve side for you to test should you wish to. This is all the standard creative sizes. This is a link to our creative guidelines. We always recommend that you have one creative of each of these sizes here, just because they can perform radically different depending on the type of offer. You want to make sure you have a header, a 300 by 250 sort of footer, an interstitial. If you want to target tablets, you got to make sure that you have the larger resolution sizes like the 728 by 90, 768 by 1024, etc. Yeah, just something to keep in mind. You are limiting the traffic you can get by not including any one or more of those creatives. So something to keep in mind. Again, these sections, real quick, they're a place where all your optimizations are going to be graphically displayed. So you'll be able to see all the rules, white and black lists that you've made. So, if you whitelist Android, that'll show up here with a date stamp. If you blacklist, publisher XYZ, that's going to show up here. Also, any optimizations you make from the reporting panel are going to show up here, and they're going to be editable. They're going to be, you can delete them right here, and you can also see the date they were made, so that you can kind of diagnose, if you see a big change in your campaign, what happened, what did I do right, what did I do wrong, and identify the changes and delete them if necessary, or make note. Overrides, exactly the same thing, but the custom bid changes, you're going to make all of those through your reporting panel, and you're going to be able to manage them here in the same way you can manage the rules. So that's kind of the stuff that I wanted to cover within the campaign setup. I do want to mention as well that we've got a lot of new features coming down the pipeline. Very excited about some of the new stuff. We're building out the platform. As you all know, we recently added some new exchanges. I'll talk a little bit more about all the differences between the exchanges in a little bit, but we recently got Google AdX and NextSage, and they're proving to be great sources of traffic. Google AdX especially is a very scalable source. It's actually now, I believe, our largest traffic source. So they actually have more available inventory than MoPub, and a lot of advertisers are giving positive feedback, and a lot more advertisers are starting to test it, and we're seeing some real growth there. NextSage the same way. They're not nearly as big as MoPub. They're sort of more on par with Smoto, but they're performing well for a lot of our advertisers, and definitely worth testing. So that's something to keep in mind. The next thing that I wanted to do was I'm going to take you through the reporting panel. I've got a campaign here. I'm just gonna give it a refresh here, and I'm just gonna show you what I want to do. Is I kind of want to walk through this campaign with you fairly quickly and explain maybe some of the optimizations that I might do to this campaign, and hopefully in doing so give you an idea maybe how to go about optimizing your campaigns, maybe what to look for, and in doing so, maybe how you can make the best make the best case for each of your campaigns and ensure that they're not limited for scale, and that they're targeting what you want to target. And yeah, so basically, as I mentioned, I've got a test campaign here. This was run for a short time. As you can see, there's a little bit of data in here. Nothing too crazy though. But what this will allow us to do is sort of analyze some statistics from an actual campaign, and hopefully be able to get an idea for some optimizations that you could do to this to improve the performance and scale it. So the first thing I'm going to do, for those of you that aren't familiar with this platform, is just press the drill button. This is going to filter into this one campaign, and it's going to allow me to then get sort of deep into it and start running placement, carrier, device, creative, etc. reports. So I'm just going to start with a placement report here. So as you can see, we bought traffic on a fair amount of different placements. I'm going to sort this by profit. That's usually how I like to start. I like to look at the most profitable and also the least profitable pockets. So why don't we start with the least profitable? So as you can see, there's that we got a fair amount of conversions. I see my CPA is sort of it's roughly 250. Let's say. So my theory, or our sort of campaign management theory for when we manage advertisers' campaigns is generally we like to look at about anywhere from a 4 to 6 or 3 to 5 times your CPA spend without a conversion as kind of the basis to blacklist a placement. And the reason why I start with placements in my optimizations is because placements actually, they more so than carriers, more so than devices, even more so than creatives, they are the difference between a campaign, being profitable or being successful and not. And the reason why I say that is that, a really poor performing placement is going to make even a good creative look bad. It's going to make even a good device look bad. It's going to make even a good ISP or carrier look bad. So the placements really are at the root of the optimization, and as such, I like to emphasize that they're kind of the first thing that you look at and sort of home base, where you can then, you can drill deeper into the placements, but you can also, you can start to gauge the overall health of the campaign by looking at placements. Okay, are there profitable placements? Are they some that aren't profitable that I need to shut off? And then go from there. And then as you sort of trim away, optimize the best, trim away the worst, then you're left with a lot that, they may not be profitable, but they've got conversions. And that's where the advanced drilling functionality and the power of our platform really comes into play. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to start by looking at placements that have spent over, let's say, 4 to 5 times my CPA without a conversion. So for simplicity's sake, why don't we say that that's $12? So $12, that's almost 5 times my CPA, or rather that's 4 times my CPA. So that's a good starting point. I see right off the bat, I didn't get any conversions from this placement. It spent $17. I'm going to say that that's probably worth blacklisting. As you can see, the box popped up. It asked me if I want to blacklist it. I go add, and now I can see that there was a rule created. This was blacklisted. This date, I can also delete it from here, and I'm not going to see that placement anymore. I'm going to keep looking, and I see this placement right here. I'm going to, looks like, let's see, a couple optimizations done to this in a previous demo. So I'm going to take this placement here. It also spent roughly $17. I'm going to blacklist that. I see a couple more here. Let's just go ahead and blacklist those. I won't run through this entire thing and do that for all the placements, but you get the idea. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to look at my profit, or profitable pockets. So I've sorted by profit. As you can see, there were a couple of placements here that performed very well for this, and I want to ensure that I'm scaling these to full advantage. So the first one here, it's got a very good margin. My CPM is very low compared to my earnings per 1,000 impressions. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to bid that up. And I'm going to bid that up. My eCPM was roughly $3.66. So I'm going to bid that up to $3.50. So I'm only paying 28 cents right now. I want to win more traffic, so I'm going to go ahead and bid that up. So now I've got an override or bid adjustment in place for this placement for $3.50. So from this point on, I'm off the auto bidder for this placement, and I'm going to hopefully increase my win rate and increase my overall eligibility to bid on this placement. So that is the same thing I want to do for this placement here. Now, as you can see, similar thing. Got an ECPM of about $1.80. I'm going to go $1.75 here. And this is kind of the idea. So I usually draw the line at placements that have spent or that have earned, doubled their money. And depending on the scale, in this case, after this point, it might not be, worthwhile to keep going too much. But I just wanted to sort of go through the flow a little bit and explain kind of how I'd optimize, how I try and scale the profitable pockets. And then the last thing I wanted to do was talk about how I would optimize pockets that are not profitable but they have conversions. So as you can see, I've got a pocket here that got 4 conversions. Revenue of $10.50 ish. Spent $38. I want to drill into this, and I want to see, okay, within this placement, there's probably things I can trim away, and there's probably also things that I could increase my bid on, and then hopefully try and hone in on the pocket that's actually converting within this placement. So as you can see, there are some placements here that are, it looks like, okay, so basically it looks like there's no profitable carriers within this placement. What I want to look at is how do I bring the bid on these ones down so that they are profitable. So now that I can see that my CPM is $5, my eCPM is $1.75, I want to bid this down to, let's say, $1.60. Therefore, when this exact combination, this placement, this carrier comes up, it'll bid $1.60, and if my eCPM stays the same, it'll be profitable. So, and this is the theory behind optimizing on our platform. So as you go, you're going to see, as you start to find pockets that have a lot of conversions, you can do the same thing. You can drill deeper. You can find out the parts of those pockets that have the highest, highest likelihood of converting, the most amount of conversions. Try and scale those up. Again, you can also, before you have enough data, you can't go as deep as maybe you could when you have thousands of dollars worth of data. So you optimize kind of at the most granular level, rather, that is statistically significant for your campaign. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's basically the flow for optimizations. So if I had, say, a placement that had a lot more conversions than that, or a carrier within a placement, I could click drill, then I could look at devices, and I could keep going. And I could also, I'm going to want to also look at creatives. I know this campaign was a test, so it only had one creative, so I'm not going to waste your time. But hopefully you're split testing multiple variations of creatives, and you are then able to report on those and optimize towards your highest performing creatives. So that's something to keep in mind. This is how we like to present optimization. We want to. The best way to think about optimization is just, you cast a wide net in the beginning. As you go, you're trimming away the obvious losers in the beginning. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to start to notice the pockets that are really working, and you're going to scale those as best you can. And then you're going to look for the stuff in the middle and find the deeper pockets. Not every placement is going to be a home run right off the bat, but it could have potential to have a segment within that placement that could be a home run. And collectively, those might lead to a large profitable campaign. So it's all about starting as broad as possible, drilling in as the data comes in, keeping it coming, keeping the spend up while hopefully increasing your eCPM and getting closer to profitability as you trim away the stuff that doesn't work and balance that with scaling the stuff that is working. So that's something to keep in mind. One other thing that I wanted to mention about optimization, I don't know if it's a case in this particular campaign, but something to think about is CTRs. I never recommend optimizing a campaign or optimizing creatives rather based on CTRs. However, optimizing placements based on CTRs can actually, it's going to have some value. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our placement report here. As I mentioned, I'm not sure whether there's any good examples to illustrate this, but sometimes what you'll see is that you've bought several thousand impressions, without getting a single click or with getting a click-through rate that just won't cut it for your metrics. So that's usually one of the first things I look for. So when I start and I want to, I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's see, what didn't perform. I wasn't profitable. What do I want to trim away? The first thing I look at is, okay, the cost metric, how much is it spent relative to my CPA goal? And then the second thing I look at is how many clicks have I got relative to my impressions? And a metric that I like to use is, between 2,000 and 3,000 impressions without a single click. That should be an instant blacklist, just because even irrespective of your cost on that, it's just the CTR is not really gonna work well for your campaign likely. So save yourself some time, block those. Also, sometimes you get a very expensive placement, but the CPM might be really high, and even though you get a few clicks, the click might cost a sizable percentage of your overall CPA goal. And you can get high conversion rates on some placements, but sometimes there comes a point where if the click costs half your CPA goal, it might just not be feasible to pay that much for clicks. So that's something to keep in mind. Something that I like to suggest you optimize fairly quickly. Usually those if there are going to be a couple of those placements in the campaign, once you've blocked them, there aren't really any more after that. So maybe something to think about when you're starting a new campaign and looking to optimize it. So that covers most of the optimization and the sort of the different features that we have that will help you scale your campaigns and optimize your campaigns and get the best data possible for your campaigns. As I mentioned earlier, I did want to touch briefly on some information on the different exchanges. So I'll do that right now. Basically, we have access to 7 exchanges on our platform right now, or 7 different unique traffic partners. Each one of them has in the thousands to tens of thousands, or even hundreds of thousands of publishers accessible through this one exchange. Starting with Smotto. Smotto is one of our bigger partners. They have tons of international traffic. They are slightly heavier in in-app than mobile web inventory, and they can perform great for performance marketers or for branded campaigns alike. They've got some potentially high performing inventory, and you usually see fairly reasonable click-through rates on their inventory, and they're a really scalable international source. MoPub, same thing. The only thing to note about MoPub is they are almost 100% in-app traffic, so a great place to test a lot of CPI type campaigns. Also, other performance campaigns, some branded campaigns. They're actually right now they're our biggest traffic source along with Google AdX. Tons of volume, tons of international traffic. We're receiving 100% of their traffic right now. Always an exchange that we recommend testing first off, because it is going to give you the most scalability, a lot of variation in the different types of campaigns that can work there, and yeah, always want to test out. Next one I want to talk about is Rubicon. They are almost exclusively mobile web, so very little in-app. They have a lot of very sort of high-end top-tier brands. For example, NBC, they've got some of the biggest news publications, some of the biggest lifestyle and entertainment publications out there. So fantastic for reaching the type of demographic that might be reading car guide or road and track type publications, stuff like NBC, lifestyle stuff. It's a different demographic and segment of the market, but for a lot of advertisers we've seen they've seen great performance targeting Rubicon because they have very strong presence in the sports, business, and lifestyle verticals. Next one I want to talk about is Tap for Tap. They are definitely one of our smaller exchanges. Having said that, they are probably one of our most in-demand exchanges as well. Their inventory, they have a lot of very engaged app users. I believe their inventory is all in-app, and they have a lot of engaged app users that, again, same thing, CPI campaigns, traditional performance type campaigns can do really well on their traffic. but keep in mind, they might not be as scalable as MoPub, Smoto, Rubicon, the other exchanges. OpenX is another great source. OpenX and Rubicon are very heavy in U.S. traffic, so that's something to keep in mind if you're looking to target U.S. They may be a great place to start. OpenX is primarily mobile web, similar to Rubicon. They've got a lot of exclusive traffic that you might not even see anywhere else other than through their exchange. So they don't monetize through an ad network. They don't monetize through anything. So you're getting exclusive traffic from publishers just through OpenX. So they're also a supplier of AirPush's display traffic. That's something that I know some of our performance partners may be familiar with. AirPush is, they're kind of known in the space for having a wide variety of ad units and inventory. We only have access to their mobile display inventory, but a lot of advertisers are looking to target that, and that's how you can get it through Go2mobi and through OpenX. AdX, as I mentioned, it is actually our biggest exchange partner. We haven't quite ramped up to full volume with AdX yet, though, so I believe MoPub is still slightly higher in terms of overall volume, but AdX is international. They've got tons of traffic, and they're a great source to test any different type of campaign, whether it's branded, performance, etc. And AdX, along with NextSage, are our two newest exchanges. NextSage is a source similar in size and scale to Smoto. They have in-app and mobile web inventory, all geos, many well-known publishers, a lot of sort of top-tier branded publishers as well as some, just well-known mobile websites and app owners. So definitely a good place to test your campaigns regardless of the verticals. So that kind of covers all the different exchanges. This information is all available within our help section. So we've got an article that roughly says the same thing that I've talked about. So I guess basically the thing to do at this point is to open up the floor for questions. And I'm just going to pull up the first few here. So okay, so we've got an advertiser asking, how do you optimize a high CPA offer, given that the CPA may be $10, $20? And how do you, what are some suggestions you have for running a campaign with a CPA of that size? So how I'd like to answer this is I'd like to return to our campaign page here, and I'd like to sort of highlight some of these features again. So first off, a lot of the settings aren't going to be any different than with a lower CPA, a CPA in the cents or low dollars. You're still going to want to use your frequency cap rather aggressively in the beginning. Session depth, same thing, depending on the other targeting. Your daily budget per placement is the thing that I suggest you put some thought into. And generally, when I tell someone a setting for daily budget per placement, I usually say the setting should be anywhere from 0.5 to 2 times your CPA, but up to a maximum of $10. And the reason why I say that is, we've worked with advertisers that have very large CPA offers. It could be $100, and it's just you're going to have to spend a lot of money on each of these publishers to get a representative enough slice. But you're still probably going to be able to see your top performing pockets with a lot less spend than that. So as I mentioned, anywhere from half your CPA goal to 2 times to a maximum of about $10. So that's something to keep in mind. I'd play around with that feature a little bit and sort of test it out. Other than that, the rest of the targeting is going to be very similar to the targeting that you would do with the lower CPA. So yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Okay, this is a good question. This is one that we get a lot, and it's one that there isn't really a definite answer, but maybe I can help shed a bit of light. An advertiser is asking, how do I know that I should shut off my campaign? So basically, when do I pull the plug on a campaign that isn't performing the way I'd like it to? And that's a tough one to answer because it really depends on the offer, the amount of data you've got, the amount money you've spent and how aggressively you've used these features here. So let's assume that you've set your frequency cap to 1, your session depth is 1 to 10, you've got a daily budget per placement, south of $5, and you've spent $500 on the campaign. So at that point, if your CPA is, $2, I would have expected to see or hoped to see, anywhere from 20% to 40% of my spend back. So, given that you've probably done some optimizations along the way, you've probably blocked some publishers that weren't performing for you, and you're trending in your eCPM is increasing day over day. So at that point, I would start to analyze, and I would dig into the campaign sort of reporting stats, and I would probably I would sort by profit, and I'd want to know, okay, so do I have profitable pockets of traffic? For me, if someone asked me that, that's the number one thing is, if all else was paused, could I target only my profitable pockets of traffic? And if there aren't any profitable pockets of traffic, or there aren't any pockets that look close, that's probably a sign that the campaign, maybe it's just not the right type of traffic for the campaign. Maybe the publishers aren't, don't have the right users for your campaign. But one thing I do want to emphasize is you do want to get enough data. So if you have a low CPA, $1 to $2, I'd say anywhere from hundreds of dollars to maybe a couple $1,000s worth of data, depending on how many conversions you've got. I'd like to, if I was optimizing a campaign from start, I'd like to see 50 conversions, and that would start to show me, okay, which carriers, which publishers, which devices are working, and maybe which ones aren't. So if you've got an offer that just does not convert at all, I would probably reassess, okay, am I targeting the right stuff? Have I set my campaign up in a smart way? Is everything working from a technical standpoint, et cetera? And if it isn't, obviously that's a time to shut the campaign down. But once you've got data and you're starting to get conversions, things are looking promising, or you're getting data, then it comes down to, okay, after a reasonable amount of spend, do I have a good amount of conversions to gauge whether there's some viability in this campaign, and do I have pockets that, if all else was shut off, would they be profitable? So that's the kind of thing I like to look for. There's no hard and fast rule, but that's some stuff to keep in mind. So hopefully that answers your question or sheds a bit of light. This question, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but someone has asked, what are some key factors that limit campaign traffic? So again, revisiting our campaign page, basically any restrictions you have in your campaign are going to limit traffic. These ones here have potential to greatly limit your traffic because, if the average person sees your ad 10 times, if you don't use frequency cap and you cap it to 1, well, you've effectively reduced your total scale by down to 10% of what it could be. Session depth, same thing. If the average person sees 20 ads in a given session and you're limiting them to the first one impression within the first 5, you're greatly limiting the potential for them to see your ad. Your daily budget per placement, this could be the biggest limiting factor along with your daily budget, obviously. If you're limiting your budget per placement to $2, the amount of publishers that could satisfy that, are in the thousands to hundreds of thousands. So that's something to keep in mind. And as I mentioned, it's more of a testing tool that you likely to open up in the future as you start to see some better results on your campaign and you want to scale it. Okay, so the next question that we've got here is, basically asking about creatives. How important are the different creative sizes? As I mentioned, maybe I'll spend a little bit more time on the actual sort of breakdown. 320 by 50 is, almost all the volume in a lot of geos and for a lot of traffic, but it's definitely worth testing the other sizes as well because, let's say you run a U.S. campaign. Well, there's potential to spend millions of dollars a day on traffic. So even if the 216 by 36 or, the 300 by 50 only accounts for 1% of that, that could be a scalable campaign all in itself. So we always suggest that you include as many or all of these creative sizes as you can. 320 by 50 is obviously the most important size for almost all the traffic, though, because it is the vast majority of the scale. So keep that in mind. Okay, so I think we're coming up pretty close to the hour mark, so I don't want to keep anyone too long. So time for a couple more questions here, and the first one is, are there any other strategies for how to scale profitable pockets of traffic while at the same time prospecting for new pockets as they come up, as new publishers are onboarded? And that's a great question, and that's actually something that I had meant to cover in more depth when I was going over the reporting side of things. So basically, there's a couple different strategies you can use when you're running a campaign. You know, the simplest one being you set it up, you optimize it, and you get it down to a point where it's profitable, and then you open up all your frequency cap, session depth, budget per placement settings, and then you're at the point where you're kind of scaled as much as you can with the current targeting. And that strategy works. You know, it's a great way to just kind of set and forget, and hopefully the profitability keeps coming. But sometimes you get campaigns where there's so much scale there that you start to find all these pockets that are profitable that, if you're targeting them by themselves, they could be profitable and make a good campaign. But you might want to target some other placements. You might want to include you might want to keep prospecting, I guess is what I'm trying to say, so that you see new pockets as they pop up, and you're not limiting yourself so early on to just the clear winners. So that's a strategy that, this is best employed for bigger, high-volume campaigns. And the way that it works is, after you get a good amount of data, you've spent a fair amount of money, you see pockets that are really profitable, and at the same time, you're not really ready to open up all those session depth, budget, and budget replacement features. And what you can do is you can actually take all the placements that are heavily profitable or converting, put them into a new campaign. You can call that a whitelist campaign. You're only whitelisting those placements or even segments of traffic, carriers, etc. And then you can open up those settings and be more aggressive with your daily budget and try and scale that at the same time that you blacklist those same placements or whatever traffic you're whitelisting out of the parent campaign, drop the daily budget, and then prospect and continue to run that at, anywhere from $20 to $100 a day, gathering data. And then as you start to get conversions, you start to move them over to the whitelist campaign and remove them from the blacklist. So that's kind of a useful strategy for high volume, really, really high volume campaigns that you want to scale, and you want to, get a kickstart on the profit. At the same time, you don't want to sell yourself short on the potential publishers. So that's a great strategy, and that's a great question, and something that I'm an advocate for doing if you've got a campaign that's, becoming a dog to manage it all in one campaign. So that's something to keep in mind. And so I think we've actually pretty much come to the end of our question period. I apologize to anyone that we didn't get to. But we as I mentioned, we have a very responsive support staff. If you email support@Go2mobi.com, it's all over the dashboard. You'll find you'll find a link where you can open a support ticket. As you can see right here, you can also, as I said, email support@Go2mobi directly. There's links within our help section, and reach out with any questions you have, and we'll be sure we answer them as quickly as possible. So that pretty much wraps up our tips and tactics webinar for today. Really excited to see such a full house, so to speak, and really looking forward to working with each and every one of you and helping you scale your campaigns and make best use of our platform and the tools that we offer. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon.